Chet is having some issues with audio this morning, so he logged off and he's going to try logging back in. Madam Chair, I believe we have a quorum, and it is 9:02.
Okay, thank you. And there's Mr. Parsons. Hopefully we can get him. Did you want to check, Chet? Can you hear us? Can't see you.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Yes, we can.
We can't have the meeting without you, so good to go. All right, well, welcome to the ConnectRVA 2045 Advisory Committee meeting for July 22nd. Thank you everyone for attending. I'm sure we have some people out on vacation and enjoying the summer, but thank you all for being here. I'm filling in for Andrew Pompey. I'm pretty sure that's who I'm filling in for, who is now working with Hanover County Planning Department. So congratulations to him. Happy to help out as we finish up these last few meetings. So I'll go ahead and get started. And Ivan Rucker with FHA, I apologize, Chet, I didn't see this part, is now an LRTP Advisory Committee non-voting advisor. Anything else we need to say on that, Chet?
Yes, Richard Duran was our representative, and he, I believe he got a promotion and is moving back closer to home. So we wish Richard well. He's going to continue to oversee our certification review through the end of August. But Ivan is a friend of the TPO and has been connected with us for a long time. So we welcome Ivan back as the official LRTP Advisory Committee member, as well as probably multiple other committees for the TPO.
Perfect, thank you. So we are continuing to have virtual meetings, and all of that information was included in the packet. Ms. Mueller, if you could please take roll call.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'll start with Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos.
Here.
Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Here.
Hootland County, Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas. Mr. Flagg. Henrico County, Ms. Smidler.
Here.
Ms. Deemer. New Kent County, Ms. Leduc.
Here.
Powhatan County, Mr. Howland. City of Richmond, Ms. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Bridewell.
Here.
Ms. Erickson. Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Rutledge. GRTC, Ms. Torres. Ms. Robinson.
Here.
RMTA, Ms. Simmons. ConnectRVA, Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Mr. Ariel.
Here.
Right Finders, Ms. Tisdale. Mr. O'Keefe. DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Here.
Mr. Sparks. VDOT, Ms. McAdory. Mr. Herman. VCU, Mr. Leonard. NAACP, Mr. Johnson. Richmond Area Bicycling Association, Mr. Burnley. Virginia Asian Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Tran. Senior Connections, Mr. Williams. RVA Rapid Transit, Mr. Campbell. Bike Walk RVA, Ms. Lockett Gordon. Port of Virginia, Ms. Nelson.
Here.
Southern Environmental Law Center, Mr. Pollard.
Here.
Virginians for High-Speed Rail, Mr. Plogger. Federal Highway Administration, Mr. Rucker. And last but not least, Tri-Cities MPO, Mr. Swakowski.
Here.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call for attendance. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate that. And just one bit of housekeeping, since we are very privileged to be able to continue these virtual meetings, I would request, if you have the ability when you're speaking, to use the camera, not necessarily for the roll call, but if you do have a comment, if you could turn your camera on. Obviously, I understand some of you aren't in a position to do that, but if you can, it really is helpful to be able to see who is speaking. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the June 24th meeting summary. Did anyone have any comments on the summary that was included in your packet? Not hearing any, do we have a motion to approve the meeting summary?
This is Tom. So moved.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Is there a second? It wasn't that exciting of a summary. I mean, it was a great summary. It looked good.
I'll second.
Who was that? I'm sorry.
Patricia Robinson.
Okay, so I have a motion by Tom Coleman, I believe, and a second by Patricia Robinson to adopt or accept the meeting summary from June 24th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Got a thumbs up, so that's good. All right, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the public comment period. Did we receive any public comments to share?
We did not receive public comments specific to the LRTP.
Okay, thank you. The next item, item number 4 on our agenda, is the LRTP process update and the task number 5 evaluation. Mr. Ariel, if you could, and Mr. Bushing, it looks like you're helping out, go over the overview, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. Let me make this full screen first. So as we all know, this LRTP process flow, the LRTP Advisory Committee adopted the constraint list of projects in the last meeting. We went to the policy board for its approval, and it was approved in the July 1st meeting. So now the fruit of the LRTP is the constraint list of project. We have got that. The next part is the evaluation of the constraint list of project in various aspects. So task 5 is basically the evaluation of the constraint plan. The objective basically is to evaluate the outcome of the constraint plan in various aspects. The performance-based planning and programming, which is a requirement by the Federal Highway and FTA. This is our first performance-based plan. So we also need to document what was the performance-based outcomes which came through this plan and how the process, performance-based planning process was used to achieve those outcomes. So we need to document that. And then finally, also evaluate the LRTP planning process in terms of public engagement and outreach, which we have done across various stages. We have already completed 4 different stages of public engagement and outreach. There were basically 2 things. The first was the general public engagement, and then there was formal review and comment period. We have our last and final public engagement and outreach period starting from August 16th to September 15th. And Chet would be discussing about that. It's a part of the agenda today. So for task 5, the subtask basically is number 1 is to report the performance, base year transportation performance reports and targets, which is reported by the state. VDOT, OEP reports it to the Federal Highway every 2 years, the mid-year, and then every 4 years, the whole report and the target. So we'll basically be, this has already been submitted to the state, but we need to document that in the LRTP as well. Then we have the ConnectRVA 2045 performance measures. So that's, I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. We have the economic impact analysis, which is basically based on what we are sponsoring, the projects which we are basically prioritizing based on what the constraint list of project is. How would that change the economic scenario in the region? Like basically, what would be the number of jobs, increased number of jobs based on the implementation of those projects? What would be the GDP changes, things like that? That's something new which we haven't done in the past. Due to the time constraint, we are not sure we'll be able to do that before the adoption of the LRTP, but we have already started the process. And if we won't be able to finish it by October, then we'll definitely do a follow-up after that. This is not a requirement, but we still want to do this. Then we have the environmental justice analysis, which Miles will be talking today. Following with that, the accessibility analysis is a part of the environmental justice analysis, which we haven't started yet, but we'll be doing that and probably reporting to the LRTP Advisory Committee next month. The air quality conformity, we had an interagency consultation meeting before the TAC meeting in July 7th, and then the TAC approved the draft a conformity report and has opened a public comment period, which ends on July 24th, a couple of days from now. And we'll be asking the policy board for the approval. So that's almost done. The last part is the public participation evaluation, which we'll be doing the very last thing. Once our final public outreach period, which would end on September 15th, once that's done, then we'll be doing the public participation evaluation. So ConnectRVA performance measure evaluation will be basically looking at how many total lane miles we had before the plan and how much do we have after the implementation of the plan based on the budget we have. And then looking at the congested lane miles, what was that in no build condition and what would be that because of the implementation plan in the built condition. The single occupancy vehicle and high occupancy vehicle person trips based on, again, the no build condition and the build condition, which is basically 2045 no built and 2045 built. VMT per capita. Congestion operational savings of the LRTP. So basically, again, looking at the E+C, which is the no build condition and the build condition, and based on the implementation of the projects, what would be the congestion operation savings of the based on the implementation of the LRTP. Similarly, the safety savings, environmental savings of the LRTP, premium transit miles. So basically, a BRT or a dedicated bus lane is considered as a premium transit mile. So I think we have some 7 odd miles now. And I think we at least have one BRT project in our constraint list of projects. So the change in the transit, premium transit miles, we'll document that. Again, transit ridership and passenger miles traveled. So based on what we have now existing, the no build condition and the build condition, we have, I think, 5 enhanced transit routes as projects in the LRTP. So we can calculate what would be the increase in ridership and passenger miles travels based on that. Then percentage of population served by transit. This is a GIS analysis in which we look at the future transit lines based on the LRTP project list. Active transportation dedicated miles, what we have now and what we'll have based on the implementation of the LRTP. So just numbers to see what the performance of the LRTP is. And then travel time improvements in major corridors. So, so this is basically, this is not the actual 2045. It's a file map, which I'm using just for now to demonstrate. So basically towards the left is what would be in the no build condition, which we call as the existing and committed, which is basically 2026 SIP, anything which is committed to 2026 or 2027, and 2045 population, 2026 network and 2045 population. And towards the right is the LRTP network, which is the 2045 built and the 2045 population. So we'll see the difference, like based on the LOS. If it's red, that it means the LOS is F, D is blue, and orange is E. So we'll see what changes based on the implementation of the plan. What would be the changes in these highway deficiencies? So we'll evaluate this. And then talked about the corridors, travel time improvements in major corridors. So we have selected 6 corridors throughout the region. 250 from West Creek to downtown, which is basically 16 miles, have 5 activity centers, which we have designated based on the socioeconomic data. And 288, the whole length of 288 from north end to south end, which has 4 activity centers. 295, the whole length of 295 within our region, north end to south end. 40 miles has 4 activity centers. Route 60 from Westchester Commons in Chesterfield to downtown, which has 5 activity centers. Total distance is 15 miles. I-95 from Kings Dominion to downtown, again 5 activity centers, 22 miles. And then the last one is Route 360 Hull Street in Chesterfield from Courthouse Road to Otterdale Road. So it has 1 activity center and 8 miles. So we'll be evaluating the travel time improvements based on the implementation of the LRTP constraint list of project in terms of both transit, wherever there is transit present, and in terms of highway as well. So this, we'll be presenting this to you most probably in the next LRTP advisory committee meeting. And I think that's all I have. If you have any questions before Miles talks about the environmental justice analysis.
Anyone have any questions for Sulab? Thank you, Sulab. I appreciate that. Okay, Mr. Bushing, are you going to go over the actual document?
So I'm actually going to go over a little bit more of the evaluation process, focusing on the environmental justice analysis. So just a quick overview. The environmental justice, and I'm sure you're all already aware of it, it's essentially the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people in the process. And fair treatment is defined as no group bearing a disproportionate impact, negative impact of the federal action or investments. And this is all taken from an executive order from the 90s. And really the focus for federal EJ is on people of color and people with low incomes. But there are other federal laws that are related to equity and involvement of people in the process, such as the Civil Rights Act or Americans with Disabilities Act. So there are other groups that are federally of concern, I guess you could say, that we also want to include in our equity analysis. So what we've done is we've identified the equity emphasis areas based on our socioeconomic analysis that we did early on in the process. And there were 6 indicators of potential disadvantage that we looked at. So it was the population, it was people of color, people in poverty, limited English proficiency, older adults, so 65 and up, people with disabilities, and 0-car households. So people who are reliant on active or transit options. And we broke those into primary and secondary indicators based on the regional characteristics and the environmental justice requirements. So again, the first 2 are the primary requirements for environmental justice. So we counted those as our primary indicators. And the other 4 were secondary indicators. So the process essentially for each census tract, we looked at each of those indicators and gave it a score of 0 to 3. Basically 0 meant it was at the regional average or above. up to 1 standard deviation. 1 was 1 standard deviation up to 2, 2 was, and so forth. So basically this was able to give us the score for each indicator. We then applied the multipliers. So basically what we wanted to do was ensure that those 2 primary factors, the people of color and in poverty, were weighted more heavily. So for each of those factors, they were multiplied by 1.5. Everything else was multiplied by 0.5. So it's a little complicated, but basically what you get is an overall index of potential disadvantage in each of the census tracts. And what we looked at was any census tract that had a score of 3 or more. This basically ensured if there was a population above the regional average for both of the primary factors, it would always be included. So we wanted to make sure we were capturing all of those census tracts. So this is the map of the region that shows the areas that were highlighted through this analysis. And these were the areas that we used for the environmental justice analysis. You can see it's Ashland, most of Charles City, kind of the East End between 95 and 64, and then South Side. And downtown, I guess, is another area to highlight as well. So those are pretty similar to the areas we've highlighted in previous plans as well. So this analysis really did match up with the expectations based on our knowledge of the region. So yes, Barb.
I was wondering whether using both of the poverty and 0 households is sort of like double counting. So wouldn't, it seems like poverty would cover it. Maybe there are 0 households where people, I don't know if it happens in Richmond, but rely more on transit or biking or whatever.
Sure. So the reason we decided to pull that is because there is federal regulation that talks about transit dependent populations as well. So that's why we included it as a separate factor. In terms of actually highlighting the tracks, I'm pretty sure all of them had one of the primary factors that was triggering highlighting anyway. So the secondary factors came into play, but they always had at least one of those primary factors as well. So I don't think it created any situations of unfairly double counting. So in terms of measuring the impacts, this is a region-wide, system-wide analysis. So each project also goes through another EJ analysis as part of the NEPA process. So that's required, which looks more at the details of pollution, sound, and the very localized area of the project. So this is more at the system level of the investments and what the impacts are. So we looked at 2 different sections. We looked at the equity in terms of the planned investments, where are dollars going, is that fairly distributed throughout the region? And we looked at equity in access. Are we providing increased access for these equity emphasis areas, those communities that we've highlighted? So in terms of the planned investments, this is very similar to the approach we've taken in previous LRTPs, but basically what we're looking at is the number of projects that serve at least one equity emphasis area and those projects that don't serve any. So it was limited in this analysis to our constrained budget projects and the bridge rehabilitation projects that were selected through the process. The committed and the private local projects, since those weren't derived from this planning process, since those were already existing projects, those weren't included in this analysis. The one big difference this time compared to what we've done in previous years is we use the same standardized buffers that we use through our evaluation. So in the past, we basically looked, is the project directly in an EJ tract? What we looked at this time was those same buffers that we used for analysis of activity centers or for job growth. So we wanted to make sure that we were capturing the entire area that we thought would likely be served by these benefits. So for bike ped type projects, it was a ½ mile. For intersections, BRT, larger type projects, it was 1 mile. And then for the major interstate type projects, it was 2 miles. And the purpose, again, was to ensure that these investments are fairly distributed throughout the region. So this is the outcome of that initial analysis. So the red is yes, blue is no. But basically, you can see more than half of the projects are serving at least one of those equity emphasis areas based on our buffers. And the value of those investments, again, it's more than half of the money is going to projects that will serve at least one of those equity emphasis areas. So this is helping us to ensure that it is fairly distributed throughout the region. The second part of the EJ analysis is ongoing. So this is, as Sula mentioned, in accessibility. So what we're trying to do is quantify the entire set of investments with respect to the improvements to access to jobs and destinations for these different groups. So we're actually going to pull it apart and look at not just, is this an EJ tract or not? It's also going to be able to give us a little bit more detail on different groups there. And it is multimodal. So we're looking at auto, we're looking at transit, we're looking at biking, we're looking at walking, we're looking at everything. So this is, as you can imagine, pretty complicated. It's taking a little bit longer than just doing the simple GIS analysis for the first part with the investments. But this is something that we'd like to try and bring back to you for the next meeting as well, I believe. So that's a summary of where we are on the EJ analysis. I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Does anyone have any questions for Miles? Got a quiet group, Miles. That was really helpful information. You explained it very well, so thank you for that. Let me pull up my agenda and see what we have next. Oh, so next we have the LRTP actual document with Ms. J. Cox and Mr. Ariel. Barbara, I think you're muted. But I love that green. It's beautiful.
Ah, there we go.
There you go.
Didn't work the first time. Good morning. How's everyone? It's good to quote see you. I'll look forward to getting all back together. Just wanted to give you a glimpse of the LRTP document, our ConnectRVA 2045, starting with the cover. This is just an idea of the color palette that we're using and how we're expressing the different modes, of course. And next slide. This is the table of contents. We are trying to keep it to no more than 70, 75 pages for the bulk of it. Chapter 3 is where the meat of the matter is, where we really do talk about the transportation issues, all modes, of course, and different strategies, programs, initiatives, and then protection of the environment and resiliency are major factors, as well as economic development. But then we just go through trying to answer those questions that are important in doing any kind of long-range planning effort, particularly transportation, because it intersects with so many things. What matters most for the future? What are the options? You know, how we went through the project selection and screening process, and how can we realistically get there? And that will touch on, in a summary fashion, the selection of constrained plans or constrained projects and policy needs, unfunded regional needs that we need to look to in the future. And then, of course, some of what Miles just went over, how did we do this time? How can we do better next time? Looking at our own performance measure evaluation in lots of different areas, as Sulab has already expressed, and all the technical appendix that support all of this. Next slide. Just to give you some idea of sample pages and the layout, we're trying to write in a very concise style with very crisp graphics and mapping. You can just keep scrolling through and sample pages, you know, trying to use graphics interestingly and photos of the region. Just an idea of our mapping, very simple base mapping with the information on top so that people can find it very readable. We will also have this, of course, in a digital format that will be easy to zoom into when we get down to detail of analysis. So you can keep going. Just some example of the analysis, graphing, further exhibit showing the bottlenecks, the work that through congestion management, and then transit, looking at near-term recommendations for enhanced routes and some of the background of all the studies that have been going on in the last couple of years, transit being one of them, and our bike ped plan that's in the process. And then thinking in terms of our logistical assets and how we relate to the larger region gives us a good picture. And then, of course, thinking in terms of issues, major issues with severe injuries and fatalities, and just showing it graphically. And then just to remind everyone, all of this, it really doesn't matter unless we pay attention to our vision. And this was crafted through a couple of our meetings with you all, just to remind what we're all working towards together. And from the vision, we have guiding principles that are guiding this whole effort, the 7 principles, which then relate to goals, our major goals. And this is really how we're going to emphasize our public outreach in performance measures and how we feel that this plan is measuring up to addressing the safety issues, for one, and environmental and land use, as well as equity, accessibility that we've talked about some today, and economic development and mobility. So I think these will be a central organizing element for our public outreach that we'll be going through in August and September. Just to give you an idea of how it's starting to look, we will have this available for public review, and we'll also have it on our website and a lot of data to go with it. But are there any questions?
Anyone have any questions? Well, I think it looks great, Barbara.
Thank you.
I know you all put a lot of work into it. Thank you. Let's see. Was there anything else on that item? Sulabh, did you have anything?
Yeah, I have a few other things.
Okay.
Barb basically talked about the main document, which we have targeted basically for the public as well as the policy board. And then we have technical documentations, which we are basically targeting out a transportation community in the region or nationwide. So these are the list of all the technical documentations which we will be completing. The socioeconomic data report, that's already completed. Then we went to do the analysis of the socioeconomic data, which we are calling the growth forecast analysis report. It's already completed as well. For the structures, bridge and culverts needs, we did the structure inventory and assessment report, which is also already completed. We'll also document all the transportation issues which came out from various studies, as well as public outreach, issues which came out from the travel demand model, and other issues which were documented by the advisory committee members. So all those would be documented in detail in a separate document. Then we have the project prioritization process, in which we already have documented the methodology, the candidate projects, the scoring sheet. Everything will be bundled together in one document. This is probably going to be like 300-400 pages document. Then the constraint plan development report. The main document would have a very abbreviated description of this because we are limiting it to 70 pages. But the constraint plan development report would include everything, the budget, how was it calculated, what was the revenue projection which received from VDOT and DRPT, and then the constraint list of project as well as the vision list. Then we have the constraint plan evaluation, which basically we talked about today in detail. So environmental justice analysis along with the accessibility analysis, the corridors of improvement, the performance measures, everything in detail would be covered in the constraint plan evaluation. Public participation and outreach report. This will document all the public comments, the process, which we adopted for public participation and outreach, all the comments we received, all the surveys. It's going to document everything. This is likely to be more than 500 or 600 pages again. Then we have the congestion management process. In both format, we have that as a report. We also would have it as the story map. It's already completed, which is kind of supplementary to the LRTP. We also do the congestion management process, I think every year or once in every 2 years, but we have to do with the LRTP as well. The air quality conformity report, which is developed by VDOT, its draft is already completed and it's in our website. And then the final thing which we want to do is the ConnectRV 2045 federal compliance, which we haven't done in the past. So it'll document what are the federal requirements and how did we achieve that in this plan. So it's still to be decided because we have a very limited amount of time to finish this. But we hope that we'll at least make a framework of this document as well. So all the technical documents, some of those are already completed and they are available in the ConnectRVA 2045 webpage. If you look at that, most of them are in draft form because all of those would be adopted when we ask for the final adoption for the LRTP in September. But you can just browse and look at those documents. We already have 5 of them already completed. The VDOT one is still in draft form, but would be completed soon. So I think that's all I have. If there's any questions on technical documentations.
Thank you, Sulabh. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay. Well, thank you, Sulabh. I know that was a lot of work too. I appreciate everyone's efforts on this. Let me pull up the agenda. So the next item, Mr. Parsons, do you want to go over the final public engagement strategy?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. We are, as you all know, approaching the home stretch for development of the plan. Barb shared some great teasers for how the document's going to look. And we are, I'll say we're self-aware of staff capacity, and we are working to do a couple things at one time. One, we want to get the document ready for public review starting August 15th. There will be a public review period August 15th to September 15th. So we want to have a draft document ready for August 15th. Second, we are planning for multiple ways for people to learn about the plan and review the draft document during that 30-day time period. So we are looking at open houses, we're looking at virtual participation options, we're looking at hybrid methods. We're thinking about creating some short videos that could give an overview of the LRTP and what it means to the region. So lots of those things happening in preparation for that 30-day public review. Once that ends, we are going to take all of the feedback we've received during that review period, as well as everything that we've been compiling over the last year and a half in terms of public meetings, Zoom calls, MetroQuest surveys, all of the feedback we've gotten through the process, and develop our final plan, which will be on the agenda for review by all the committees, including this one, the TAC, and the Policy Board. Policy Board action is scheduled for October 4th, which is a Monday. It's a meeting that was moved so that we could have the Policy Board take action before the existing plan expires, which is later that week. So we have a schedule, a pretty rigorous schedule in place, but I just wanted to lay that in front of everyone I do have a special request, and I've reached out to many of you who also serve on the TAC. I'm trying to get on the schedule for Board of Supervisors meetings in each jurisdiction between now and, we'll say, mid-September, when the public review period is over, just to give an overview of the LRTP, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and how people can learn more about it. I think I've heard back and gotten on the schedule for maybe half of the jurisdictions. So thank you for that, and I look forward to hearing from the rest of you in terms of availability. I know that there's summer schedules for, at least for August, for many boards, and we'd like to work with you to find a time to come make those presentations. So that's another aspect of the public review period. I think the last bit of information is that we're going to be going to our, we have a consultant bench that is available for assistance with public engagement and public review and those kinds of things. We've had them help us with our update to our Title VI plan. And we're going to be going to them for some assistance in putting the final draft together and setting up an outreach plan for that 30-day review period. So I don't want to surprise anybody if you get information or request from a consultant, and we'll certainly, as that moves forward, we'll feed more information to you about what that means and how we can all best work together to get this accomplished. I think that's it.
Thank you, Chet. Barb, did you have a comment?
Chet, can you hear me?
Yes.
Did you get on the schedule for Chesterfield's board?
I have not yet.
Okay, I'll see what I can do to help.
Thank you.
With that.
Appreciate it.
Yes, I will point out that the email for my locality went to, I believe, my administrator. So if you haven't heard from them, you might want to reach out about getting it on your
Will do.
calendar. I didn't mean you, Chet. I meant other members of the locality members. If you haven't heard about it, similar to Barb, it may have gotten overlooked. So you might want to reach out. Okay, any other comments or questions about the public engagement portion?
I think one final note, Nora, is if any member of this committee is representing an organization that would like to hear more about the long range plan, we'd be happy to figure out the best way to do that over the next 2 months. So please reach out to me or Sulab or Barb to let us know how we can help.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, well, our next meeting is August 9th. And if we don't have any other items for the good of the group, this meeting is adjourned. You all have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.